The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning, gleaming silver against the black of space like nothing humans had ever seen before. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station, watching through. The viewport as smaller craft detached from the mothership and approached with precise, elegant movements. His coffee had gone cold in his hands an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. "Sir, they're requesting permission to dock," Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called from her communications console. Her voice carried the tension everyone felt, though she tried to hide it behind military professionalism. Jake nodded and straightened his uniform jacket. "Grant permission, and send word to Admiral Carter immediately." The aliens had been broadcasting peaceful intentions for 3 days now, ever since their arrival. Their messages came in perfect English, which should have been impossible, but somehow wasn't. They called themselves representatives of the Galactic Federation, and they wanted to welcome humanity into their community of worlds. A docking bay filled with activity as Earth's finest, prepared for first contact. Dr. Lisa Parker adjusted her tablet one more time, checking her notes on xenobiology protocols. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of alien life, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The reality of it felt surreal. The airlock hissed open, and the delegation stepped through. Ambassador Zektar led the group, a tall figure with blue-tinted skin and large, kind eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. Behind him walked representatives from 12 different species, each more fascinating than the last. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4. One seemed to float slightly above the ground, while another had what looked like wings folded against its back. "Greetings, people of Earth," Zektar said, his voice carrying musical tones that no human throat could produce. "We are honored to finally meet you. Your species has shown remarkable progress, and we believe you are ready to join our great community." Jake stepped forward and extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. Zektar looked at the offered hand with curiosity, before clasping it gently. His skin felt warm and slightly rough, like well-worn leather. "Welcome to Earth," Jake said. "We're grateful for your peaceful approach and your message of friendship." The ceremonial aspects went smoothly enough. Earth's leaders had prepared for weeks, studying every piece of protocol they could imagine. The aliens seemed pleased with humanity's efforts to be respectful and welcoming. They shared gifts from their various worlds, crystals that glowed with internal light, metal alloys stronger than anything humans had developed, and seeds from plants that could grow in any soil. But when Ambassador Zektar produced the treaty documents, Jake felt his first stirring of unease. The papers, if they could be called that, were made of some material that felt like silk but looked like polished metal. The text appeared in English as he watched, shifting and flowing until it settled into readable words. "This is the standard membership agreement," Zektar explained with obvious pride. "Every species that joins our federation signs this same document. It has served us well for over 3,000 years. Jake accepted the documents and began reading. His training had taught him to always read contracts carefully, a habit that had served him well in his military career. As his eyes moved down the pages, his frown deepened. Dr. Parker noticed his expression. "Is something wrong, Captain?" "I'm not sure," Jake said quietly. "Some of these clauses seem unusual. Would it be possible to have our legal teams review these documents before we proceed?" The request clearly surprised the alien delegation. Zektar's large eyes blinked several times, and he exchanged glances with his companions. A creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird made a series of clicking sounds that Jake's universal translator rendered as concern. "Review?" Zektar asked. "I am afraid I do not understand. No species has ever requested time to review the membership agreement. It is an honor to sign it immediately upon presentation." Jake felt his diplomatic training kick in. We deeply appreciate the honor, Ambassador. However, it's human custom to carefully examine any agreement before signing. We want to make sure we understand all our obligations and rights as new members. The alien delegation looked genuinely confused. Another representative, this one resembling a tall, thin human with silver skin, spoke up. But surely you wish to begin receiving the benefits of membership immediately. Access to our trade networks, our medical knowledge, our technology? Of course we're interested in those benefits, Dr. Parker said, stepping in to help Jake. But we also want to understand what we're agreeing to give in return. The silver-skinned alien made a sound like wind chimes. Give in return? You give nothing. You receive everything. This is how first contact works. Jake's unease grew stronger. In his experience, deals that seemed too good to be true usually were. Nevertheless, we'd like some time to study these documents. Perhaps a few weeks? The suggestion caused what could only be described as panic among the aliens. They huddled together, speaking in their various languages too quickly for the key. Translators to keep up. When they separated, Zektar looked genuinely distressed. Captain Morrison, I must contact the Galactic Council immediately. No species has ever requested modifications to the Sacred Accords. This is unprecedented. We're not requesting modifications, Jake said carefully. We just want to understand what we're signing. But the aliens were already gathering their things. Zektar bowed politely before speaking. We will return when the Council has decided how to proceed. This situation requires wisdom beyond my authority. After they left, Jake and Dr. Parker sat in the empty conference room, staring at the alien documents that lay on the table between them. What did you see in there that worried you? Lisa asked. Jake flipped through the pages, pointing to specific sections. Look at this clause about resource sharing. Earth would be required to provide 60% of our mineral wealth to the Federation. And this one about population distribution suggests that large numbers of humans would be relocated to other worlds. Lisa leaned closer to read. That does seem extreme. But maybe it's standard procedure for integrating new species? Maybe, Jake said, but his tone suggested he doubted it. Look at this section about military forces. We'd be required to disband all Earth-based defenses and rely entirely on Federation protection. That could make sense if they're maintaining galactic peace, Lisa offered, though she sounded uncertain. Jake closed the documents and looked out the viewport toward the alien mothership. In my experience, when someone offers you everything and asks for nothing in return, they're usually planning to take everything and give you nothing. Over the following days, news of humanity's request to review the treaty spread throughout the ship and eventually to Earth itself. Most humans were excited about joining a galactic community, but some shared Jake's caution. Admiral Paul Carter arrived at the station to personally review the situation. What's your assessment, Captain? Carter asked after reading through the documents himself. Sir, I think we need to be very careful here. These terms seem designed to make us completely dependent on the Federation while giving up our autonomy. Carter nodded slowly. My thoughts exactly. I'm ordering a full legal review by our best teams. If these aliens are as benevolent as they claim, they shouldn't object to us understanding what we're agreeing to. 3 weeks passed before Ambassador Zektar returned, this time with an even larger delegation. His demeanor had changed from friendly confusion to barely concealed frustration. Captain Morrison, he said without preamble, the Galactic Council is deeply concerned by your species' resistance to integration. No other species has required this much time to accept membership. Jake remained calm. We appreciate the Council's patience. Our review has raised some questions we'd like to discuss. Questions? Zektar's voice rose slightly. What questions could there possibly be? The membership agreement is perfect as written. It has brought peace and prosperity to thousands of worlds. Dr. Parker stepped forward with a tablet containing their findings. We've identified several areas where the terms seem heavily weighted in favor of existing Federation members. We'd like to propose some modifications that would make the agreement more balanced. The silence that followed was deafening. Zektar stared at her as if she had suggested something impossible, like changing the laws of physics. Modifications? He whispered, "You wish to modify the sacred accords?" "We wish to negotiate terms that work for both parties," Jake said firmly. "Isn't that how agreements usually work?" The alien delegation exchanged increasingly agitated communications. Finally, Zektar composed himself and spoke with forced calm. "The sacred accords are not negotiable. They are the foundation of galactic civilization. To change them would be to question 3 millennia of peaceful expansion." Jake met his gaze steadily. "Then I'm afraid we'll have to respectfully decline membership in the Galactic Federation." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a species had rejected the offer of Federation membership. Ambassador Zektar's large eyes grew even larger, and his blue skin seemed to pale. "This is impossible," he breathed. "No species refuses membership. No species questions." The news of humanity's rejection spread through the Galactic Federation like wildfire through dry grass. On the capital world of Zentara Prime, the massive crystal spires that housed the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with activity that hadn't been seen in centuries. Council leader Vex Mirren called an emergency session for the first time since the Andromedan crisis had threatened to tear apart 3 star systems. Ambassador Zektar stood before the assembled representatives of 500 worlds. His blue skin now pale with exhaustion and stress. He had been traveling between Earth and Zentara Prime for weeks, trying to convince anyone, that humanity could be reasoned with. "They want to modify the sacred accords," he reported to the stunned assembly. "Not just small changes, but fundamental alterations to how new species integrate into our community." The chamber erupted in sounds that no human ear could have interpreted. Clicks, whistles, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses filled the air. As hundreds of different species expressed their shock and confusion, Council leader Vex Mirren, a tall being covered in what looked like living crystal, raised 4 arms for silence. "This is unprecedented," Vex Mirren announced, her voice resonating through both sound and electromagnetic frequencies. "In 3,000 years of expansion, no species has ever questioned the sacred accords. They are the foundation of our peaceful civilization." Trade Minister Kol Theran, whose species resembled upright walking trees with faces carved into their bark, spoke with the voice of rustling leaves. "Perhaps we have been too hasty. Maybe this species requires more time to understand the benefits of membership." "Time?" Ambassador Zektar's voice cracked with strain. "I have given them months." Their negotiator, a human called Tom Bradley, presented me with a list of demands that would fundamentally change everything we stand for. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Mary Collins sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by holographic displays showing world leaders from every continent. The global government had been established only 50 years ago, but moments like this made everyone grateful for unified leadership. "What exactly are they offering us?" asked Prime Minister Chun Wei from the Beijing hologram. His expression showed the same mixture of excitement and caution that everyone felt. Tom Bradley, Earth's chief negotiator, pulled up the relevant sections of the Federation Treaty on the main screen. On the surface, it looks generous. Immediate access to their technology, trade networks, and medical knowledge. But look deeper. The screen highlighted specific clauses as Tom continued. They want 60% of Earth's mineral resources. They want to relocate 2 billion humans to what they call more suitable worlds. They want us to disband all military forces and rely entirely on Federation protection. And they want the right to establish population monitoring stations in every major city. President Collins leaned back in her chair. That doesn't sound like membership. That sounds like surrender. My thoughts exactly, Tom agreed. I've been negotiating international treaties for 20 years, and I've never seen terms this one-sided presented as generous offers. The European Union's representative, Chancellor Maria Gonzalez, raised her hand. But surely some of these requirements make sense? If they're maintaining galactic peace, maybe centralized military control is necessary. Maybe, Tom said, but consider this. Why would a peaceful federation need to relocate half our population? Why would they need to monitor our cities if we're willing members? And why would they need 60% of our resources if they have access to thousands of worlds? The questions hung in the air as world leaders contemplated the implications. It was President Collins who voiced what everyone was thinking. It sounds like they're not looking for new members. They're looking for new colonies. Back on Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council continued their emergency session. High Admiral Crickstall, a warrior species that looked like armored bears, standing on two legs, pounded his massive fist on his speaking platform. Enough debate, he growled. If this species refuses to accept membership, we should proceed with standard integration protocols. No world remains outside the Federation for long. What are you suggesting? Council leader Vex Mirren asked, though her crystalline features suggested she already knew. I am suggesting that we remind these humans that Federation membership is not optional. Every species in the galaxy is either part of our community or protected by us. There is no third option. The chamber fell silent. It had been over 1,000 years since the Federation had needed to use force to integrate a species. Most civilizations eagerly joined once they understood the benefits. The few that initially resisted had always come around once they saw the Federation's overwhelming technological and military superiority. Ambassador Zektar shifted uncomfortably. High Admiral, I must point out that these humans have been studying our technology since first contact. Their learning curve is unprecedented. In just 3 months, they have reverse engineered several of our basic systems. Impossible, scoffed Science Director Yulanasa, whose gaseous form flickered with irritation. No primitive species could comprehend our technology so quickly. Nevertheless, Zektar continued, their orbital defenses have been significantly upgraded using hybrid human Federation technology. They may not be as helpless as other pre-contact species. On Earth, Agent Karin Walsh was discovering just how much the Federation had underestimated humanity's intelligence capabilities, leading a joint task force of Earth's best intelligence officers. She had been monitoring Federation communications since the first diplomatic meeting. They're not as united as they pretend to be, she reported to President Collins during a classified briefing. Our analysis suggests that at least 30% of Federation member species are unhappy with their current arrangements. President Collins leaned forward with interest. What kind of unhappiness? Karen pulled up classified intelligence reports. On the main screen, several species have been asking questions similar to ours. The Altarian Republic has been quietly requesting reviews of their mining rights agreements. The Beta Centauri Collective has been questioning why 70% of their population was relocated away from their homeworld. So we're not the first to notice these problems, the president mused. We're just the first to say no. Exactly. And that's making some Federation leaders very nervous. If we successfully resist integration, it might inspire other species to start demanding better terms. Dr. Lisa Parker had been conducting her own investigation into Federation history and practices. Working with Earth's best xenobiologists and historians, she had compiled a disturbing picture of the Federation's expansion methods. It's sophisticated colonialism, she explained to Admiral Carter during a secure video conference. They offer immediate benefits to get species to sign, then gradually increase their demands once the new members are dependent on Federation systems. Admiral Carter studied the data on his screen. How gradually? It varies by species, but the pattern is consistent. Within 50 years of joining, most new members have been stripped of their military capabilities, had their populations dispersed across multiple worlds, and become economically dependent on Federation trade networks. By the 100-year mark, they're essentially client states with no real autonomy. The Admiral's expression darkened. And if a species tries to resist after they've already joined, there's no record of any species successfully leaving the Federation once they've signed the Sacred Accords. A few have tried, but they've always been brought back into compliance through economic pressure or, in rare cases, military intervention. Back on Zentara Prime, Trade Minister Kolveron was presenting what the Federation leadership considered a generous compromise. We could offer them 70% of their resources, instead of the standard 60% allocation for new members. Surely this unprecedented concession will satisfy their concerns. Consul Leader Vex Miran considered the proposal. This would set a dangerous precedent. If we give humans better terms than other species, it could cause unrest among existing members. Better unrest than the chaos of having a species outside our control, High Admiral Crickstall grumbled. These humans are already contaminating other species with their questions. 3 of our newest members have requested meetings to discuss their treaty obligations. The mention of other species asking questions sent a ripple of concern through the chamber. The Federation's power depended on member species accepting their arrangements without question. If doubt began to spread, the entire system could face challenges it had never been designed to handle. Ambassador Zektar returned to Earth with the Federation's new offer, accompanied by an even larger delegation that included some of the galaxy's most skilled diplomats. But when he presented the generous concession of allowing Earth to keep 70% of its resources, Tom Bradley's response was immediate and devastating. Ambassador, with respect, you're still missing the point, Tom said calmly. We're not negotiating over percentages. We're questioning why you think you have the right to any of our resources at all. The statement hit the alien delegation like a physical blow. Several of them actually stepped backwards, and Zektar's skin color shifted through several shades of blue before settling on a sickly pale tone. While the Galactic Federation argued among themselves about humanity's unprecedented behavior, Earth was quietly implementing what military strategists called Plan Defiance. General Chris Turner stood in the command center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as status reports flowed in from secret installations across the solar system. How are we progressing with the reverse engineering project? He asked Dr. Amy Richards, who had been leading Earth's crash program to understand alien technology. Dr. Richards pulled up holographic displays showing complex technical schematics. Better than we hoped. The Federation's technology is advanced, but it's not magical. Once we understood the basic principles, our engineers have been able to improve on several of their designs. The improvements were remarkable. During the first diplomatic meetings, human technicians had secretly scanned every piece of Federation equipment they could access. While the aliens had been focused on ceremony and protocol, Earth's best minds had been busy learning how their visitors' technology actually worked. The faster-than-light communication system is ready for testing, Dr. Richards continued. And we've successfully created our own version of their gravity manipulation drives. They're more efficient than the Federation models. General Turner nodded with satisfaction. And the colony ships? The first wave launches in 72 hours. We've identified 17 star systems within 50 light years that show signs of habitable worlds. Our ships will reach them before the Federation even realizes we've left. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of waiting for Federation approval or permission to expand, humanity would simply do it on their own. Earth had always been a species that preferred action to endless discussion. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to head of Colonial Operations, reviewed the manifests for the first wave of colony ships. Each vessel carried 10,000 volunteers, along with the most advanced technology Earth had ever produced. The ships themselves were marvels of human engineering, combining Federation principles with human innovation. "Are we really ready for this?" he asked Dr. Parker, who had been appointed as chief advisor for alien relations. Lisa smiled confidently. "Jake, we've been preparing for this moment since we first realized what the Federation really wanted. Every major nation on Earth has contributed their best people and resources. We're as ready as we'll ever be." The Federation's response to humanity's continued refusal to sign their treaty had been predictable. They had sent increasingly urgent messages, offered better terms, and finally begun making vague threats about the dangers of remaining outside galactic civilization. But they had not expected humans to completely ignore them and start expanding into space on their own. Ambassador Susan Hayes, Earth's newly appointed galactic liaison, prepared for what would be the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Unlike previous negotiations, this time she was not seeking Federation approval. She was announcing humanity's intentions. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, addressing the assembled representatives via long-range communication, "Earth wishes to inform you that we are beginning our own expansion into nearby star systems. We have no intention of interfering with Federation territory or claimed worlds." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Council leader Vex Mirren's crystalline features blazed with reflected light as she struggled to process what she had just heard. "You cannot simply expand without permission," she declared. "All colonization efforts must be approved by the Federation. This is galactic law." Susan's response was calm but firm. "With respect, Council Leader, we were never part of your Federation. We are not bound by your laws. However, we are willing to engage in trade and diplomatic relations with any species that wishes to deal with us as equals." The word "equals" sent shock waves through the Federation hierarchy. No species had ever demanded to be treated as an equal to the established galactic powers. The entire system was built on careful hierarchies, with older members having more influence and newer members gradually earning their way up the ladder over centuries. High Admiral Kriegstall's armored form bristled with aggression. "This is intolerable. No species has ever expanded without Federation oversight. We cannot allow this precedent." "You cannot allow it?" Susan's voice carried a note of amusement. "Admiral, you seem to be under the impression that you have authority over independent species. We are not your subjects." Back on Zentara Prime, emergency sessions were being called faster than they could be scheduled. The Federation had never faced a situation where a spacefaring species simply ignored them and proceeded with their own agenda. Their entire diplomatic framework was built around the assumption that every species would want to join their community. Minister Coltheron was among the first to realize the broader implications. If humans successfully establish independent colonies, other species might start questioning why they need Federation permission for their own expansion efforts. The fear was well-founded. Intelligence reports were already coming in about increased activity in several Federation territories. Young species that had been members for less than a century were asking their representatives about renegotiating their expansion quotas. Some were even requesting copies of their original membership agreements, documents that most had never bothered to read carefully. On Earth, the first colony ships lifted off from launch facilities that had been built in secret over the past 6 months. The launches were not hidden, but they were not announced either. By the time Federation monitoring stations detected the ships, They were already accelerating toward their target systems. Commander Nick Johnson led the first wave. From the bridge of the colony's ship Freedom. The vessel was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, and carried everything needed to establish a self-sufficient human presence on a new world. More importantly, it carried the first human-built, faster-than-light communication array, which would keep the new colonies in constant contact with Earth. How does it feel to be making history? Asked Dr. Peter Collins, Earth's chief strategist, who was traveling with the first wave to establish diplomatic protocols with any alien species they might encounter. Nick looked out at the stars that were already beginning to shift as the ship prepared to enter faster-than-light travel. It feels like we're finally doing what humans have always done best. We're exploring, we're expanding, and we're not asking anyone's permission. The Federation's military commander, Admiral Crix Tal, convinced the Council to authorize what he called a peaceful intervention. A Federation fleet would intercept the human colony ships and escort them back to Earth, where their leaders could be reasoned with about the dangers of unauthorized expansion. The plan seemed reasonable to the Council members. After all, how could a primitive species that had only recently achieved spaceflight possibly resist ships that represented thousands of years of technological advancement? The answer came 3 days later, when Admiral Crixtal's fleet encountered the human colony ships near the edge of the Sol system. What the Federation Admiral expected to be a simple matter of overwhelming these upstart humans with superior technology turned into the most shocking military encounter in galactic history. Human vessels, this is Admiral Crixtal of the Federation. Fleet, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to return to your homeworld immediately. Your unauthorized expansion violates galactic law. Commander Johnson's response was polite but firm. Admiral, we appreciate your concern, but we are not under Federation jurisdiction. We're exercising our right as an independent species to explore space. You have no such right, Crixtal snarled. No species operates outside Federation authority. Return to Earth now, or we will be forced to escort you back. What happened next stunned everyone involved. The human colony ships, which Federation sensors had identified as primitive vessels with basic defensive capabilities, suddenly revealed themselves to be far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Stealth systems that had been concealing additional ships deactivated, revealing a full battle fleet escorting the colonists. Even more shocking, 3 of the ships in the human fleet were clearly of alien design, but they were flying alongside the human vessels as allies rather than captors. Admiral, Commander Johnson said calmly, I'd like you to meet our friends from the Rigel system. They decided they'd rather join our expansion efforts and continue sending 80% of their resources to Federation Central Command. The Rigelians had been among the Federation's newest members, and their defection sent panic through Admiral Crixtal's fleet. If established Federation members were abandoning the system to join humanity, it meant the entire galactic order was at risk. This is impossible, Crixtal whispered, staring at his tactical displays. Federation members do not defect. They do not join primitive species. Admiral, came a new voice, this one clearly alien, but speaking through human communication systems. We prefer to think of it as joining a more honest alliance. The humans offered us partnership. The Federation offered us servitude. The Battle of Kepler Station, as historians would later call it, lasted less than 30 minutes. The news of the Battle of Kepler Station spread through the galaxy faster than the Federation could contain it. On worlds that had been Federation members for centuries, species that had never questioned their arrangements suddenly found themselves asking uncomfortable questions about their own treaties. Council. Leader Vex Mirren stood before an emergency assembly that had been called for the 4th time in 2 weeks. Her crystalline features, normally stable and serene, flickered with stress patterns that other species had never seen before. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, she announced to the packed chamber. 17 species have formally requested reviews of their membership agreements. 5 have demanded immediate renegotiation of their resource allocation quotas. And 3 have submitted formal notices of withdrawal from the Federation. The chamber erupted in sounds of distress from hundreds of different species. High Admiral Krickstall, still nursing wounds from his encounter with the human fleet, pounded his armored fist on his speaking platform. "This is the result of appeasing these humans," he growled. "We should have crushed their expansion fleet when we had the chance. Now they have emboldened every malcontent in the galaxy." Trade Minister Coltheran's bark-like skin rustled with agitation. Crush them with what? Their ships outfought our finest fleet. Their technology is advancing at a rate we cannot match. And they have allies now, species that know our weaknesses because they were once our members. The admission of military defeat still stung the Federation leadership. For 3,000 years, their technological superiority had been absolute. No species had ever challenged them militarily, because no species had ever developed weapons specifically designed to counter Federation advantages. But humans had done exactly that. Earth's military engineers had studied Federation ship designs during the diplomatic meetings and had identified critical vulnerabilities. They had created weapons that could pierce Federation shields, ships that were faster than Federation vessels, and tactics that exploited the Federation's overconfidence. On the world of Altair Prime, Chancellor Kezara addressed her planets, governing council with words that would have been unthinkable just months before. "The humans have shown us that alternatives exist," she declared to the assembled representatives. "For 200 years, we have sent 80% of our rare minerals to Federation worlds, while our own people work in dangerous mines. We were told this was necessary for galactic stability. The humans are offering us a different arrangement." Altarian Republic had been one of the Federation's model members, prosperous and seemingly content with their role in the galactic community. But humanity's example had revealed cracks in their satisfaction that had been building for generations. "What exactly are the humans offering?" asked Mining Director Veltar, whose family had run Altair's extraction operations for 50 years. "Chancellor, Kezara activated a holographic display showing the human proposal. Full control over our own resources. Military protection through mutual defense agreements. Trade partnerships based on equal exchange rather than tribute requirements. And most importantly, the right to make our own decisions about our planet's future." The contrast with Federation membership was stark. Under Federation rules, Altair needed permission for any major policy changes. Their military was limited to local police forces. Their trade relationships were controlled by Federation commercial regulations. And their resource extraction quotas were set by bureaucrats on Zentara Prime who had never visited their world. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Kyle Mitchell was discovering just how extensive the galaxy's dissatisfaction with Federation rule actually was. His mission was to establish formal diplomatic relationships with species interested in joining humanity's growing coalition of free worlds. "The response has been overwhelming," he reported to President Collins during their weekly security briefing. "We have formal applications from 12 species, informal inquiries from 30 more, and intelligence reports suggesting that at least 50 Federation members are seriously considering their options." President Collins studied the star charts, showing the location of potential allies. What's driving this? Surely the Federation has provided some benefits over the centuries. Kyle pulled up detailed analyses of Federation membership patterns. The benefits exist, but they're heavily concentrated among the older, more established members. Newer members, especially those who joined in the last few centuries, tend to contribute far more than they receive. Dr. Peter Collins, who had returned from the first colony expedition, added his observations. The Federation operates like a pyramid scheme. The species at the top enjoy tremendous advantages, while those at the bottom essentially support the entire system through resource contributions and restricted development. The pattern was becoming clear as Earth's intelligence services compiled data from across the galaxy. The Federation's oldest members, the so-called core worlds, had access to the best technology, the most favorable trade arrangements, and the greatest political influence. Newer members were systematically kept in positions of dependence and inferiority. "It's brilliant in a cynical way," Dr. Collins continued. "By the time a species realizes how the system works, they're so dependent on Federation infrastructure that leaving seems impossible. Until now." Back on Zentara Prime, Ambassador Ziktar was delivering increasingly desperate reports to the Galactic Council. His latest mission to negotiate with human representatives had ended in complete failure. "They are actively recruiting Federation members," he reported, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. Ambassador Mitchell presented me with a list of species that have already signed preliminary agreements with their coalition. Some of these are worlds we have counted as loyal allies for over 1,000 years. The betrayal cut deep. The Federation had always prided itself on the loyalty and gratitude of its member species. The idea that longtime allies would abandon them for an upstart human organization challenged everything they believed about their role in the Galaxy. Council. Leader Vex Mirren's crystalline features darkened. "What exactly are these humans offering that we cannot provide?" "Equality," Zektar said simply. "They treat every species as an equal partner, regardless of when they joined or what they contribute. They share technology freely rather than doling it out based on membership status. And they allow complete self-governance as long as coalition members honor their mutual defense agreements." The human model was everything the Federation was not. Where the Federation had hierarchies and restrictions, the coalition offered partnership and freedom. Where the Federation demanded conformity and tribute, the coalition encouraged diversity and mutual benefit. High Admiral Cookstall stood to address the Council, his massive form radiating frustration and anger. "Enough analysis. It is time for action. We must demonstrate to the galaxy that abandoning the Federation has consequences." "What are you suggesting?" Trade Minister Koltharan asked, though his rustling leaves suggested he already suspected the answer. "Economic sanctions," Crixtal declared. "Any species that joins this human coalition should be cut off from Federation trade networks, denied access to Federation technology, and isolated from the galactic community. They will quickly learn that independence comes at a price they cannot afford." The proposal had support among the older Federation members, who saw the human challenge as a threat to their privileged position. But Ambassador Ziktar raised a critical concern. "Admiral, our intelligence suggests that the humans and their allies have already established independent trade networks. They may not be as vulnerable to economic pressure as you believe." The warning proved prophetic. When the Federation announced economic sanctions against coalition members, the response was swift and devastating. The humans had spent months secretly establishing alternative supply chains and trade, relationships that bypassed Federation-controlled systems entirely. Even worse, the sanctions backfired by driving more species toward the coalition. The Rigel Confederation, which had been considering their options, immediately signed a full alliance agreement with humanity after being threatened with economic isolation. "The Federation just proved our point for us," Ambassador Mitchell reported to Earth. "They showed the galaxy exactly what happens to species that dare to question Federation authority. It's accelerating defections rather than preventing them." The tipping point came when the Beta Centauri Collective, one of the Federation's most important manufacturing centers, announced their intention to leave. Their departure would remove nearly 15% of the Federation's industrial capacity and eliminate access to several crucial trade routes. Emergency sessions were called, as Federation leaders realized they were facing not just a diplomatic crisis, but potential economic collapse. Worlds that had been peaceful and productive for centuries were choosing uncertainty and independence over the security of Federation membership. Dr. Amy Richards, working from Earth's new intelligence center, had been analyzing the broader implications of the Federation's crisis. Her findings were both fascinating and troubling. The Federation's expansion model was unsustainable, she explained to a gathering of Earth's top military and political leaders. 6 months after the Battle of New Geneva, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before humanity's first contact with the Galactic Federation. What had once been a monolithic organization controlling thousands of worlds had fractured into dozens of independent alliances, confederations, and the rapidly growing coalition of free worlds. President Mary Collins stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, humanity's new diplomatic headquarters built at the edge of what had once been Federation space. Through the massive viewports, she could see ships from over 60 different species docked at the station's various ports. Each vessel represented a world that had chosen freedom over the security of Federation membership. The transformation has exceeded our most optimistic projections, reported Ambassador Kyle Mitchell as he joined the president at the viewport. We now have formal alliance agreements with 87 species, and preliminary discussions are ongoing with 40 more. The numbers were staggering, but they only told part of the story. The real change wasn't in the quantity of coalition members, but in the quality of relationships they had built. Unlike the Federation's hierarchical structure, the coalition operated on principles of genuine equality and mutual benefit. Dr. Peter Collins, now serving as the coalition's chief strategic advisor, had spent months analyzing the transformation. What we're seeing is unprecedented in galactic history, he explained during a meeting of coalition leadership. For the first time, species are working together as true partners rather than in relationships defined by dominance and submission. The results were visible everywhere. Former Federation worlds that had struggled under resource quotas and development restrictions were experiencing economic booms as they gained control over their own resources. Scientific advancement, which had been controlled and limited by Federation bureaucracy, was accelerating at rates that surprised even the most optimistic projections. Commander Nick Johnson, now Admiral of the Coalition Defense Force, regularly received reports that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. The Centauri research stations have developed a new faster-than-light communication system that's 3 times more efficient than Federation technology, he reported. The Altarians have perfected mining techniques that triple ore extraction while reducing environmental impact. And the vegan shipyards are producing vessels that incorporate innovations from 15 different species. The innovation explosion was a direct result of the Coalition's open technology sharing policies. Unlike the Federation, which had hoarded advanced technology among its core worlds, the Coalition encouraged all member species to contribute their expertise and benefit from others' discoveries. But the most significant change was happening on the former Federation capital world of Zentara Prime. The massive crystal spires that had once housed the galactic council chambers now stood empty, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of empty corridors and abandoned meeting halls. Council leader Vex Mirren, one of the few high-ranking Federation officials who remained on the planet, spent her days reviewing reports of continued defections. Her crystalline form had lost much of its former brilliance, dimmed by stress and the realization that everything she had devoted her life to was crumbling around her. The Procyon Alliance has formally withdrawn from the Federation, she announced. To the handful of representatives who still attended the increasingly pointless council sessions, they cite our inability to provide adequate trade opportunities and our refusal to grant them the autonomy they require for continued membership. The reasons were always the same. Former Federation members were finding that independent cooperation Through the Coalition offered everything the Federation had promised, but never delivered: genuine partnership, shared benefits, and the freedom to make their own decisions about their futures. High Admiral Crickstow, recently returned from captivity in Coalition facilities, brought news that was even more disturbing to the Federation's remaining leadership. "The humans treated our prisoners better than we treat our own citizens," he admitted reluctantly. "They provided medical care, comfortable quarters, and even allowed us to participate in educational programs about Coalition governance." The treatment of prisoners had become another source of embarrassment for the Federation. Coalition facilities operated under strict ethical guidelines that protected the rights and dignity of all beings, regardless of their previous affiliations. Many Federation prisoners had requested asylum rather than return to their homeworlds, preferring life in Coalition space to the restrictive hierarchies they had left behind. Ambassador Susan Hayes had established her permanent office on Unity Station, where she worked daily with representatives from the galaxy's remaining independent organizations. Her latest project was perhaps the most ambitious diplomatic effort in galactic history: the creation of a new framework for interstellar cooperation that would replace the failed Federation system. "We're calling it the New Galactic Compact," she explained to a gathering of Coalition members and interested observers. Unlike the Federation's Sacred Accords, which were imposed uniformly on all members, the Compact will be a flexible framework that allows different species to participate at levels appropriate to their needs and capabilities. The proposal represented everything the Federation had never been. Instead of rigid hierarchies, the Compact offered multiple levels of association, from full membership to limited trade partnerships. Instead of resource quotas imposed from above, it established voluntary contribution systems based on each world's capacity and willingness to participate. Most importantly, it included mechanisms for peaceful withdrawal and renegotiation that the Federation had never provided. Dr. Amy Richards, working with teams of experts from dozens of species, had been analyzing the deeper implications of the galactic transformation. Her findings were both encouraging and sobering. The collapse of Federation control has released creative energies that were suppressed for centuries, she reported. "We're seeing artistic, scientific, and cultural achievements that never would have been possible under the old system. But we're also seeing some instability as species adjust to their new freedom." The instability was manageable, mostly consisting of disputes over territorial boundaries and trade agreements that had been settled by Federation decree for generations. But the Coalition's flexible mediation systems were proving effective at resolving conflicts without the heavy-handed interventions that had characterized Federation governance. More concerning were reports from the galaxy's outer regions, where several species had chosen complete isolation rather than participation in any interstellar organization. The trauma of Federation membership had left some worlds suspicious of any form of galactic cooperation. "We're giving them space and time," Ambassador Hayes explained when asked about the isolationist worlds. "The Coalition's founding principle is voluntary association. If a species chooses independence, that's their right. We'll be here if they ever decide they want to rejoin the galactic community." The patient approach was already showing results. 3 formerly isolationist worlds had quietly begun trade relationships with Coalition members, testing the waters for deeper cooperation without formal commitments. On Earth, the transformation had been equally dramatic. The planet that had rejected galactic membership was now the de facto capital of a new galactic civilization. Human colonies were thriving on 17 worlds, and Earth's technology had advanced by centuries in just a few months through cooperation with Coalition partners. Engineer Rachel Woods had been leading the development of the galaxy's new communication and transportation infrastructure. "We've created something the Federation never imagined," she told a gathering of human and alien engineers. "A network that connects worlds without controlling them, that facilitates cooperation without demanding submission." A new infrastructure was already revolutionizing galactic civilization. Trade flowed more freely than ever before. Scientific collaboration reached unprecedented levels, and cultural exchange was creating art and literature that drew inspiration from hundreds of different worlds. But perhaps the most significant change was generational. Young beings across the galaxy were growing up in a universe where cooperation was voluntary, where diversity was celebrated rather than suppressed, and where the future seemed full of possibilities rather than predetermined by ancient bureaucracies. The former Federation world of Altair Prime. Young Altarian students were learning about the time when their planet had been required to send most of its resources to distant worlds in exchange for limited self-governance. To them, the old system seemed as archaic as the medieval monarchies that had once ruled parts of Earth. Why did they accept it for so long? Asked one student during a history lesson about the Federation period. Her teacher, Chancellor Kezara, smiled as she considered the question. Because they didn't know there was an alternative. It took one stubborn species to show the galaxy that things could be different. This stubborn species had become something of a legend throughout Coalition space. Human determination and refusal to accept unfair terms had inspired countless other species to examine their own arrangements and demand better treatment.